You can't remember the last time you felt genuinely excited about something. A notification pops up. You get a tiny hit of pleasure that disappears in seconds. You scroll for hours, but feel emptier when you stop. You achieve something you thought would make you happy, and within minutes, you're already looking for the next thing. Food doesn't taste as good. Music doesn't hit the same. Hobbies that used to bring you joy now feel like chores. And you're wondering, what's wrong with me? Why can't I feel happiness like I used to? The answer isn't depression, though it can look similar. It's not laziness or ingratitude. It's dopamine dysregulation. Your brain's reward system has been hijacked, recalibrated to crave constant stimulation at levels that natural experiences can't match. And the worst part, it's by design. In the next 25 minutes, we're breaking down the neuroscience of dopamine, how modern technology exploits your brain's reward pathways, why you're stuck in a cycle of craving and emptiness, and most importantly, how to recalibrate your brain to feel pleasure again. This isn't about willpower. This is about understanding the chemistry controlling your life. Welcome back to Psychopath, where we decode your mind. If you're ready to understand why nothing feels good anymore, hit subscribe because this gets scientific. Let's start with what dopamine actually is, because most people misunderstand it. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a chemical messenger in your brain. But it's not the pleasure molecule. That's the common misconception. Dopamine doesn't create pleasure. It creates motivation, anticipation, and the drive to seek rewards. Think of dopamine as the wanting system, not the liking system. It's what makes you crave the next episode, the next scroll, the next notification, the next bite of food. The actual pleasure you feel when you get what you want. That comes from other neurochemicals like opioids and endorphins. But dopamine is what drives you to pursue those experiences in the first place. And here's the critical part. Your brain's dopamine system evolved in an environment of scarcity. For 99% of human history, rewards were rare and unpredictable. Finding food, securing safety, connecting with others, these were high dopamine events because they were crucial for survival and they didn't happen constantly. Your brain developed a system that released dopamine when you anticipated a reward and then a burst when you got it, motivating you to repeat behaviors that increased your chances of survival. But now we live in an environment of abundance, infinite content, instant gratification, constant stimulation. Your dopamine system is being activated hundreds, sometimes thousands of times a day. Every notification, every like, every swipe, every new piece of information triggers a small dopamine release. And your brain isn't designed for this. It's like an engine built for occasional sprints being forced to run at maximum RPM 24/7. Eventually, something breaks. That something is your dopamine sensitivity. When your brain is constantly flooded with dopamine, it adapts. It downregulates, meaning it reduces the number of dopamine receptors to protect itself from overstimulation. Think of it like turning down the volume on a speaker that's too loud. Except you're not turning down the speaker. You're making yourself less able to hear. Now, activities that used to give you a normal dopamine hit, reading a book, having a face-to-face conversation, taking a walk in nature, these register as barely noticeable. Your brain's threshold for stimulation has been raised so high that normal life feels boring, flat, meaningless. Let's get specific about how this happens with social media because it's the clearest example. When you open Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or YouTube, you don't know what you're going to see. This unpredictability is key. Neuroscience research shows that unpredictable rewards release more dopamine than predictable ones. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling addictive. Every scroll is a mini slot machine pull. Will this be interesting? Funny? Shocking? You don't know, and that uncertainty keeps you hooked. The algorithm is designed to maximize this. It shows you just enough good content to keep you scrolling, mixed with mediocre content so the good hits feel more rewarding. And when you do get that hit, the dopamine spike from a viral video or a post that resonates, your brain wants more immediately. So you keep scrolling, chasing that next hit. But each scroll gives diminishing returns. The dopamine spikes get smaller. You're not enjoying it anymore, but you can't stop. That's not a character flaw. That's your neurochemistry being exploited. Now, let's talk about the dark side of this. The psychological and physiological consequences of chronic dopamine dysregulation. First, anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from things that used to bring you joy. Activities that require sustained attention and delayed gratification. Learning a skill, building something, deep relationships, these require baseline dopamine sensitivity to feel rewarding. When your receptors are downregulated, these experiences feel like work with no payoff. You start avoiding them because your brain doesn't register the reward. Second, impaired impulse control. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, planning, and self-control, relies on healthy dopamine signaling. When dopamine pathways are dysregulated, this system weakens. You know you should work on that project, but you open social media instead. You know you should go to bed, but you keep scrolling. You're not lazy. Your brain's impulse control mechanism is compromised. Third, increased anxiety and depression. Dopamine dysregulation is strongly linked to mood disorders. When your brain's reward system isn't functioning properly, you experience emotional flatness, lack of motivation, and persistent feelings of emptiness. This looks like depression, but it's neurochemical, not purely psychological. Traditional talk therapy might help you understand why you feel this way, but it won't fix the underlying dopamine problem. Fourth, tolerance and escalation. Just like with drugs, you need increasingly intense stimulation to get the same dopamine response. This is why content keeps getting more extreme. More shocking headlines, more outrageous takes, more graphic imagery. Creators and platforms know they're competing for your increasingly desensitized attention, and you're stuck in an arms race where normal stimulation loses every time. Let me give you a real-world example to illustrate this. Alex, a 26-year-old software developer, came to therapy complaining of depression. He'd achieved everything he thought he wanted. Good job, financial stability, relationship, nice apartment. But he felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy. Just numbness and constant restlessness. His daily routine: wake up, check phone immediately, browse Reddit for 30 minutes, work while constantly switching between Slack, email, Twitter, and coding, lunch while watching YouTube, evening gaming while simultaneously scrolling Instagram, bed while watching TikTok until 2 a.m. His brain hadn't experienced low stimulation environments in years. When we measured his phone use, he was averaging 9 hours of screen time daily, not counting work. His dopamine system was completely fried. We did a dopamine detox, which we'll discuss later, and within 2 weeks, he reported feeling emotions again. He cried watching a movie for the first time in months. He enjoyed a meal without needing to watch something simultaneously. He felt motivated to work on personal projects. His brain, given a break from constant overstimulation, began to recalibrate. Now let's talk about the neuroscience of addiction, because that's what we're really discussing. Brain imaging studies using fMRI show that social media addiction activates the same neural pathways as cocaine, gambling, and other addictive behaviors. Specifically, the nucleus accumbens, the brain's primary reward center, and the ventral tegmental area, which produces dopamine. When you get a notification, see a like, or watch an engaging video, these areas light up. And, just like with substance addiction, you develop tolerance. You need more to feel the same effect. You experience withdrawal when you stop. Irritability, anxiety, restlessness, the inability to focus. Your brain is literally going through withdrawal from dopamine hits. And here's what makes this particularly insidious. With drugs, you know you're using a substance. With digital addiction, it feels like normal life. You're just staying connected, being informed, relaxing. The addiction is invisible, normalized, even encouraged by society. Let's discuss why food doesn't taste as good anymore. Highly processed foods are engineered to deliver supernormal dopamine hits. Sugar, fat, and salt in combinations that don't exist in nature trigger massive dopamine releases. When you regularly consume these foods, natural foods that humans evolved eating, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, these barely register. Your brain's reward system has been trained to expect the intensity of Doritos, not the subtlety of an apple. Same principle applies across domains. Real-world sex can't compete with the novelty and intensity of pornography. Real conversation can't compete with the rapid-fire stimulation of texting. Real achievement can't compete with the instant gratification of video game rewards. Your brain's reward system has been recalibrated to expect artificial intensities that real life can't match. Here's the evolutionary mismatch. Your dopamine system was designed to motivate survival behaviors in an environment of scarcity and unpredictability. Hunt for food, you might succeed or fail. Dopamine drove you to keep trying. Pursue a mate, uncertain outcome. Dopamine kept you motivated. Explore new territory, risky but potentially rewarding. Dopamine made you willing to try. The system worked because rewards were meaningful, infrequent, and required real effort. Now, you get dopamine hits for literally nothing. You don't have to leave your bed. You don't have to risk anything. You don't have to wait. And your brain, not designed to distinguish between a dopamine hit from achieving a real goal and a dopamine hit from a notification, just knows it got rewarded. But there's a crucial difference. Real achievements, building something, helping someone, mastering a skill. These create lasting satisfaction because they engage multiple reward systems and build self-efficacy. Digital dopamine hits create temporary spikes, followed by crashes. You get the wanting without the meaningful having. Let's talk about the impact on relationships and social connection. Human beings evolved to find deep social connection highly rewarding. Long conversations, shared experiences, physical touch, eye contact. These trigger dopamine along with oxytocin and other bonding neurochemicals. But they require time, attention, and emotional vulnerability. They're high effort, high reward activities. Digital interaction is low effort, low reward, but higher frequency. You can text 50 people with less effort than having one deep conversation. Your brain gets constant small dopamine hits from notifications, replies, likes. but none of the deep satisfaction of genuine connection. Over time, this trains your brain to prefer the easy hits over the meaningful ones. You become socially isolated while feeling constantly connected. And the loneliness, which is a massive dopamine and serotonin disruptor on its own, makes you seek more digital connection, which provides less real satisfaction, creating a vicious cycle. Now, the question everyone wants answered: how do you fix this? How do you recalibrate your dopamine system? The answer is dopamine detox, but not the trendy, extreme version you see online where people sit in dark rooms doing nothing for 24 hours. That's not sustainable or necessary. Real dopamine recalibration is about systematically reducing supernormal stimuli and retraining your brain to find pleasure in normal experiences. Here's the framework. Step 1. Identify your highest dopamine sources. These are typically social media, gaming, pornography, junk food, excessive news consumption, anything that gives you quick hits without real effort or meaning. Step 2. Reduce or eliminate these for a defined period. Start with 1 week. This isn't forever. It's a reset. Step 3. During this period, engage in low dopamine activities that used to bring you joy but now feel boring. Reading physical books, going for walks without headphones or podcasts, having face-to-face conversations, cooking real food, creating something with your hands. These will feel unrewarding at first because your dopamine sensitivity is low. That's normal. Push through. Step 4. Notice the discomfort. You'll experience boredom, restlessness, irritability, strong cravings to return to high dopamine activities. This is your brain throwing a tantrum because it's not getting its usual fix. Don't judge it. Just observe it. Step 5. After the detox period, reintroduce high dopamine activities slowly and mindfully. Set boundaries. Specific times, specific durations. The goal isn't to eliminate all pleasure, but to regain control. Let me give you the neuroscience of why this works. When you remove constant dopamine stimulation, your brain's receptor density begins to normalize. Think of it like resting an overworked muscle. The down-regulated receptors gradually increase again. Your baseline dopamine sensitivity improves. Activities that registered a 0 on your reward scale start registering again. This happens relatively quickly for most people. Measurable improvements within a week. Significant recalibration within 2 to 4 weeks. But this requires actually doing the detox, not cheating. Not substituting one high dopamine activity for another. Your brain needs a break from supernormal stimuli to recalibrate to normal. Here's something important that often gets overlooked. Dopamine dysregulation affects different people differently based on genetics, environment, and psychological factors. Some people are naturally more prone to addiction and dopamine dysregulation. If you have ADHD, your baseline dopamine levels are lower, which makes you more susceptible to seeking external dopamine hits. If you grew up in chaotic or neglectful environments, your reward system may have developed abnormally. If you have a history of substance abuse, your dopamine pathways may already be compromised. This doesn't mean you're doomed, but it means your recalibration might take longer and require more support. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, can help. Medication, when appropriate, can help. But the underlying principle remains the same. Your brain needs to relearn what normal stimulation feels like. Let's address the societal dimension because this isn't just an individual problem. We live in an economy that profits from your attention. Every major tech company's business model depends on keeping you engaged as long as possible. The algorithm doesn't care about your mental health. It cares about maximizing watch time, engagement, ad revenue. They hire neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, UX designers specifically to make their platforms as addictive as possible. Infinite scroll wasn't an accident. Autoplay wasn't an accident. Push notifications weren't an accident. These features were deliberately designed to exploit your dopamine system, and they're winning. Average screen time keeps increasing. Mental health metrics keep declining, but awareness is growing. People are starting to understand that their attention is being stolen, their dopamine systems hijacked, their mental health compromised for profit, and that awareness is the first step toward change. Here's the practical takeaway. You're not weak for struggling with this. You're up against billion-dollar companies that have spent decades perfecting the science of addiction. But you have agency. You can reclaim your dopamine system. Start small. Delete one app for 1 week. Set your phone to grayscale. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Put your phone in another room when you sleep. These seem trivial, but they break the automatic patterns that keep you hooked. Your brain will resist. It's going to tell you that you need to check, that you're missing out, that you'll be less informed or less connected. That's the addiction talking. Ignore it. After a few days, something shifts. You start noticing things again. The world feels more vivid. Conversations feel more engaging. You have energy for things that used to feel like too much effort. That's your dopamine system recalibrating. That's your brain remembering what normal pleasure feels like. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, pick one high dopamine source and eliminate it completely. Not reduce, eliminate. Track how you feel. Day 1 will be uncomfortable. Day 3 will be hard. Day 5, you'll start noticing changes. Day 7, you'll have data about how dependent you've become and how much better you can feel. And if this video made you realize just how much your dopamine system has been hijacked, the next one breaks down the psychology of addiction and why willpower alone isn't enough. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and remember, you're not broken. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do in an environment it was designed for. Change the environment. Reclaim your brain.